Ding.
Hello, Vroomers!
I'm Nick.
I'm Jack. And Australia has the oldest, flattest, and driest inhabited continent with the least fertile soils. And today, we're talking about the Australian Grand Prix.
What?
Would you like me to repeat that?
You could break it down for me?
So it's the oldest, flattest, and driest inhabited continent
Oh.
with the least fertile soils.
We're talking like geologically, like it's not the oldest country, but it's the oldest landmass.
It's the oldest, flattest, and driest inhabited continent. I'm hoping that I didn't mess that up when I said it for the intro now.
Why are you telling us about Australia, Jack?
Because today was the Australian Grand Prix.
Was it?
It sure was.
It was nearly yesterday.
Well, not for me here.
Oh, true.
Well, I guess it was sort of nearly yesterday here, but I watched it today. And I know it was today.
Your only option was to watch it today.
Well, I could have stayed up very late or woken up very early, I suppose.
But it'd still be today.
It would still be today. That's true. I see what you're saying. I'm on the same page.
It's at 1 a.m.
Yes. What time? So for our many listeners and viewers at home,
Who are very
would you like
curious.
to share where you are today for this podcast?
I am in Switzerland.
Wow.
Whoa. I'm 6 hours ahead of you. It's 1:30 for you and 7:30 for me.
Whoa.
Whoa.
So it was even more today for you than it was for me. Is that right?
More what?
The race was even more today.
Oh, yeah. It was more today. It was absolutely 100% today. For me.
That's great.
That's good, yeah.
Time is so interesting.
And it's not what this podcast is about.
I have pages of notes that we could talk about for how hard it is to deal with time and dates in writing computer programs. And let's dive into it. Just kidding. So we're in Australia, and since we've been talking about how far away Australia is in terms of time, I think this is a good time to mention that I heard over the week that Christian Horner was saying that freight costs for F1 right now are ridiculous, and they're going to be literally double this year what they've been in previous years.
That's insane. Do you know why that is? Is it like lack of shipping people available or something?
I think it's a combination of high oil prices and just high prices for shipping things in general.
Yeah.
And that the second one I'm not as familiar with the causes of. But if you are at home, feel free to send us an email at vroompod@gmail.com.
Or reach out on Instagram.
Yes, we have an Instagram. What is the Instagram handle?
I'm not 100% sure.
Cool. I'm pretty sure it's vroompod. And we also have a Twitter at vroompod. And we have a website, vroom.show. And so if you're watching us on YouTube, we'd like to let you know that you can also listen to us as a podcast on Apple Podcasts or Overcast or Spotify. And if you're listening to us as a podcast, we'd like to also let you know that we're available on YouTube. All the info is at vroom.show.
Just about covers the bases.
What other things can we talk about that aren't this race? Anything else, Nick?
I've had some good cheese lately.
Oh, Is Switzerland known for its cheese? Is there a certain type of cheese that's known to be from Switzerland?
Gruyere.
Oh.
I'm not giving in to you.
If you know of any Swiss cheeses, please send us an email at vroompod@gmail.com.
Any recommendations, please? We need them.
Okay, before we get into qualifying, I'm going to take one drink of water from this very large water bottle.
I must admit, I didn't watch qualifying.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
This will be fun.
I think I saw a little bit of the first practice before the race, and that was it. And then I watched the race this afternoon. I was traveling a lot. It sucked.
That makes sense. So let's do it this way. This will be a little bit of an experimental Vroom pod episode. I'm going to tell you what happens in qualifying, and you're going to react.
Yeah, I'm going to have to.
How does that sound?
Unless I start lying, I'm going to have to react.
This will be fun. So in Q1, at the beginning of Q1, Nicholas Latifi spun off the track.
No, he didn't.
He did. And that, I think it caused maybe a yellow flag or something. But then he was okay. He got back on the track.
Did he hit the wall or anything? He just spin off?
I think he just spun off because he was racing again a little bit later in Q1, in the same Q1 that he spun off. And he got into a legitimate crash with Lance Stroll, which red flagged the session.
Continue.
This one, I think, was actually determined after the fact to be Lance Stroll's fault, but it was like this really weird. So Latifi came out of the pits, and then and then let Stroll by, and then immediately tried to pass Stroll back. But then Stroll didn't know he was doing that, and Stroll was trying to let an Alfa Romeo by on the other side, and so Stroll just turned right into him and caused a ton of damage to the Williams, which is a bummer because Latifi has been crashing that thing a lot this year.
So, I don't think I like Lance Stroll.
Yeah.
But I don't really find many of the drivers on the grid dislikable, unlikable. I don't know, pick the right word, but I don't think I like Lance Stroll.
Yeah, I don't think that's a bad opinion.
It's not a hot take.
He's sort of funny to me because he's there because his dad owns the team, but he's not
he's a good
that
driver.
bad.
Yeah.
He's not like a Mazepin
He's been in the points
level.
before. Yeah, definitely not a Mazepin.
But he's also not great.
No. No, he's not.
So, he will come up in the race a little bit too.
They retire from that.
They both retired from qualifying for that.
Mm-hmm.
So there's this sort of interesting thing that happens. That happened with 2 minutes left in the session. So the cars had one shot to do one warm-up lap and then take one hot lap. So they all kind of lined up at the edge of the pits and kind of raced around, which was interesting, but it ended up not really mattering that much.
Yeah.
So in Q1, Albon, Magnussen, Vettel, Latifi, and Stroll get out. Vettel has a really tough week up to this point. He was out for 2 weeks with COVID, and then he crashed the car in FP3, and I don't even think he was able to run it in FP2, and just had very little time in the car. And so naturally, he actually almost didn't get it out in Q1. I think the only reason they even got a lap in at all was because of this red flag.
I actually know one notable item, or maybe this is when it happened. Is this the scooter, or was that in practice?
Oh, I think that was FP3.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the one thing I know that happened this weekend, prior to the race day.
Can you tell us what happened?
Seb Vettel hijacked, was it a Medix Whose was it? Some
I think it's the scooter
Marshall.
that they use, like if you crash on the other side of the track, the one that
Yeah.
they use to bring you to the paddock.
Right. He should have hopped on the back, but Sebastian hijacked this man's scooter and rode it around the track and did a nice kingly wave to the spectators on his way around.
And then he got fined.
Yeah, you can't do that. What are you doing?
It's funny. He's got to stay relevant somehow.
He also looks like garbage.
Yeah.
I think he looks the closest to homeless any Formula One driver has ever looked.
He's not having a great year thus far, and
Yeah.
Aston is having a terrible year. And I
Yeah.
can't help but think if he's thinking about retiring, because I don't know. He's a 4-time world champion. It's like, do you really need to be traveling all around the world?
And he hasn't
To be
even
last.
sniffed victory since his last championship, I don't think. Maybe he had some wins on Ferrari.
Yeah, he had a pretty mediocre stint with Ferrari, I think.
Yeah.
He definitely won some races, but he wasn't close to the championship fight, I don't
Yeah.
think. I don't think I should say close. I feel like he was kind of in the hunt for a few years, but more
Yeah.
recently it's been
It's got to be in the cards at this point.
Yeah. Let's talk about Q2 real quick. There's not a lot that goes on. We do get a chance to see that the Ferrari is porpoising like crazy. It's porpoising more than the other cars, but yet it's still able to keep it in the track and put some good times up.
I have a thought about that, though. It looked a bit different to me, the way it was porpoising. It was like a lower frequency of a porpoise, but very intense. So low frequency, but like really low, really high. Whereas the other cars are like super high frequency, maybe a little bit more difficult to see with the eye. Less high, less low.
That's interesting. I didn't notice
Yeah.
that.
I mean, I can't say that's like 100% correct, but the way it looked to me was like the Ferrari was really getting up there and getting low.
Huh. It is definitely a different kind of porpoising.
Yeah.
From what I heard
each
about
car.
why they were able to still run the car fast with that level of porpoising is that that happens to them in the straights, but apparently when they get to the turns,
They're fine.
it stops.
Yeah.
Whereas Mercedes is struggling with that in the turns, which
losing grip in the corners.
loses grip.
Gotcha.
Exactly. So, other than that, FPQ or Q2, not too eventful. Gasly, Bottas, Tsunoda, Guan Yu Zhou, and Zhou Guan Yu, and Mick Schumacher. Get out. So this is the first time that Valtteri Bottas has not made Q3 in like over 100 races. So that's somewhat notable.
Whoa. Was he 12th?
Yes, he was 12th. He made it
Yeah.
in every single race he raced for Mercedes
Yeah.
for all those years.
Wow.
But we knew this was coming.
Yeah.
The Alpha was
I knew
pretty good
eventually.
this year, but he's not gonna make Q3
It's-
every single race.
Too middle of the grid to guarantee Q3 for the rest of the year. Yeah.
Definitely. Q3, Fernando Alonso is on an absolute flyer of a lap. And he has car trouble towards the end of the lap in turn 11. And he can't downshift, so he can't slow the car down sufficiently, and he crashes.
He can't literally can't downshift?
Yeah, he said that it was some sort of a hydraulics issue, and you can see on the footage the car is stuck in fourth gear, and he can't downshift and crashes.
Obviously, I know engine braking's a thing, but I didn't know it was that significant to where he can't bail out of a corner with his brakes. That's crazy.
Yeah, I didn't know that either, but everything is so like millimeter perfect in F1. It doesn't surprise me that like you lose one form of braking like that and you just overshoot the corner.
I mean, I can't even finish a lap in the video game on easy. So
Maybe you're not engine braking.
yeah, I gotta start downshifting a lot.
I know in the game, one of the strategies that I find effective is if you wait to downshift the very last gear until you're actually mid-turn, it breaks the rear wheels loose a little bit, and it causes your car to get more oversteer, and it helps you helps the car be more pointy through the turn.
Look at you. Pointy.
I really know what I'm talking about. So that causes a red flag, and that sort of causes some other effects. Mainly that Carlos Sainz gets totally stuck. And so he was just about to cross the start-finish line when the red flag came out, so his time doesn't count. And then apparently they couldn't get his car started in the garage, so he doesn't come out to take another lap. And he ends up in P9.
Whoa.
Other than that, there's Leclerc has a pretty exceptional lap, and everything else is pretty much what you would expect. So that makes the qualifying set, and then I don't have a starting. So I was going to try to read the starting grid because I know there was some penalties, but I actually don't seem to have that reference. But I do have the qualifying order, which I will run through incredibly fast. Leclerc got pole, Verstappen in second, Checo in third, Lando Norris, Lewis Hamilton, George Russell, Daniel Ricciardo, Esteban Ocon, Carlos Sainz, and Fernando Alonso round out the top 10. And we've talked about the other ones that got out. So that was that. Fernando Alonso had said after qualifying that he thought that they had pace for pole. And he actually tweeted a picture of the sector times that shows that he could have, depending on his Sector 3 time, he was in the range where he could have taken pole from Leclerc.
Which is ironic, because I don't think we talked about the DRS zones.
You're right. Would you like to enlighten us?
The original plan this weekend was that there were going to be 4 DRS zones on the track. Did it happen it happened in qualifying, right? They maintained it through qualifying?
They maintained it through the 3 practices, and they got rid of it for qualifying.
Gotcha. Yeah, so. And apparently Alonso was he was very against it. He was protesting it. He preferred 3 to the 4. I imagine it was a safety reason.
Oh, I actually didn't know that.
And then he raced okay. But yeah, weird that he really had this pace in qualifying, and then, I don't know.
Well, that's a good lead into the race itself. So Carlos Sainz and Fernando Alonso start on hards, and the Aston Martin start on hards, but they don't really matter in this race. They're very far back. And everyone else starts in the mediums.
What about Alex Albon?
He also might have started on hards. He was pretty far back at the beginning, too.
He had to have started on hards.
You're right. I didn't make a note of that. I actually think Brundle, in my defense, Brundle said that only Sainz and Alonso were on hards in the broadcast. But you're right. We will get to Albon and why he's definitely on hards to start later. They also say in the broadcast, this is the largest sporting crowd in Australian history.
Oh, that's
and it's
cool.
a little bit larger than the crowd at the Circuit
Austin.
of Americas in Austin, Texas.
That was big. We had like 150, I think.
Per day, 150.
Yeah.
And then total, quite a few. This one was like 420,000 in total.
Whoa. That's a lot of people.
Yes. Nick, would you like to take the start?
Sure. Gun goes off. Carlos Sainz, starting in his shitty position, moves backwards. Lewis and George got out pretty well. Lewis moves up to P3 or P4. George like right behind him, maybe a car in between them. I don't know what else notable.
That's it. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's the notable notes.
the notary notes.
I do think Lewis did make it to P3, and then Sainz said later on, I think, what happened.
But
he had some issue.
Wrong. Yeah, because tire temperature probably played a factor considering he was on the hards, but he was moving backwards the whole first lap or two.
Yeah, I found where after the race he said he had to change the steering wheel before the race and it wasn't set up correctly.
Oh no.
So he had anti-stall at the start, which lost him positions.
Jeez, what bad luck for him this weekend.
Just a terrible weekend.
Yeah.
Which leads into lap 2, where he is trying to attack on these hard tires and make up some positions, and he loses the car, spins it out, and just totally beaches it. Immediately digs holes with those rear tires.
And it sucks because there was no damage to the car. He just beached it so hard he got trapped.
Yeah. And you can't race it again if you need to get it taken out for you. Like if the marshals actually have to come take the car, it's done for you, even if there's no damage. So that causes a full safety car while they rescue his car from the beach, and he's done.
So like everyone else on the grid, anyone who's like ready to score points is like chomping at the bit when you see maybe the fastest car on the grid go.
Yeah.
Like,
and you can see like in the hands of Leclerc, it's very fast right now.
Oh, it gets insane. Yeah. We can talk more about that later.
Yes, we will. We will. Lap 5, I just wanted to call this out. I don't think it really matters that much in the actual race, but I thought it was a super interesting strategy. This is during the safety car still. Lance Stroll is in last place, and he comes into the pits to exchange his hard tires for some mediums under the safety car, drives all the way around the track, comes back into the pits, and exchanges those medium tires back for some hards while still under the safety car. And since he's an absolute plumb last, he doesn't lose any positions or anything at all by doing that because he can just catch back up to the pack.
Wow.
And so,
I didn't notice that.
Like I said, it doesn't end up mattering, but it's very interesting, especially, we'll get to Albon a little bit later, but Albon's able to basically race the entire race on one pair of tires. And Lance Stroll, by doing this move, now he doesn't have to actually put on any other tires because the rule is that you have to use 2 tire compounds during the course of the race, 2 different ones.
Wow.
So he did 1 lap on the mediums, and that counts.
Wow. So he lost no time to get to the better tire.
Yeah. I think, if the hard is the better race tire, he was able to stay on the hards for the entire race, essentially.
Wow. That might be the best strategic move we see all year. And least consequential at the same time.
That's true. It's a cool move, but you can only do that move when you're in absolute dead last place.
Yeah. Oh man.
So not a whole lot else happens for a while.
Yeah. We see interesting things though. We see Mercedes having decent pace. We see the McLarens having decent pace. Not a lot of fighting going on, I would say, through the midpoint of the race.
Yeah.
And then what happens?
So then we get to our first round of pit stops. A few drivers pit before this, but then the main interesting pit stop part of the race is around lap 23 when Leclerc comes in and is actually able to pit and keep the lead of the race. So some of the people that were close to him, like I think Verstappen, had already come in. So we had enough of a gap in first that he stays in first.
Yeah.
Lewis Hamilton pits and comes out in front of Checo, and there's this nice little battle where Checo has warmer tires and is able to make a really nice move around the outside on Lewis Hamilton. Probably the coolest move of the race.
Maybe this happens again later. I don't know. I feel like Checo went around Lewis twice today. Am I crazy?
I don't remember that.
Yeah.
but I definitely couldn't say for sure.
Maybe I saw. No, that doesn't make any sense. I don't know. I don't know what's happening. I'm pretty jet lagged. There's also another question I have for you. I don't know if it's appropriate now. Keep going a little bit though.
Okay, well, just interject with it whenever you feel like it's appropriate.
Yeah.
I can't promise I'm going to be able to answer it though. Right around this time, unfortunately for some, and fortunately for some, Sebastian Vettel spins coming off the curb in turn 4 and causes another safety car. And at the exact same moment, just purely by coincidence, George Russell pits. His scheduled stop was the lap immediately after Lewis's. And this works out great for him because the pack has to slow down, and he actually pops out in front of Lewis Hamilton and in front of Checo in third. At this point,
maybe that's my confusion. Maybe Checo went around George at some point, and I thought that was
he did. Yes.
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think that was what happened. Which happens soon, so we will come back to that shortly. At this point, the whole field is on hards, and some of the field still has not pitted because they started on the hards, and then everyone else has come in for those hards. Slightly interesting on lap 27, the safety car stops. That's not a good way to say that. The safety car goes into the pits. It doesn't just stop in the middle of the track. The period of the safety car is ending.
Ends. The car comes off.
The car comes off, and so there's actually, I didn't realize this, but they talked about it on the broadcast. There's a rules change that I think just started this race that says that you can't pass, I think it's that you can't pass the rear wing of the car in front of you during the safety car restart period, which is what Max loves to do, where he gets right alongside and tries to really rush them, and famously did that at the end of Abu Dhabi, and he was doing it in previous races this year too.
I mean, granted, it was within the rules, technically, but I feel it was always implied that you're not supposed to do that. It's a safety car. It's a yellow flag. You don't essentially race the people around you during a yellow flag.
Yeah. Although I will say, though, in Max's defense, he only does that when it's actually a green flag, but it's the onus is on the lead car to actually accelerate. Yeah. And you're not allowed to overtake, though, until the start-finish line, no matter what. But then I think it can be tough, if you're like I know, but from the video games at least. But if the car in front of you is deciding when to accelerate and you don't time it right when they go, they could pull out quite a bit ahead of you. And sometimes they'll do creative stuff with timing it with turns and
to screw the person behind you.
Yeah. But in this safety car, Leclerc doesn't do a good job getting away. I think on the broadcast they said he took the turn a little too wide or something, and he actually gives Max a pretty decent shot at him right off the bat from the restart. But Max is not able to get by him, and then Leclerc was just so much faster than everyone else today, so Leclerc pretty quickly builds up a gap, and not an issue.
Unfortunate we didn't get to see Carlos too, to see if, I don't know, just see to confirm how fast the Ferraris are. Obviously Charles in it is incredibly fast, but we don't know.
Yeah. I think there's no reason to think that Sainz wouldn't also be fast.
Yeah.
Because he's a very good driver. He's been showing that he's a very good driver.
Yeah.
On lap 30, Checo has a pretty nice pass on Fernando Alonso. And I thought it was cool because we were riding on board. I think this was the one we were riding on board with Checo. And Brundle was talking about how he's going to force Fernando to defend into turn 1. And that's going to slow him down, and that Checo is just going to take it on the right line, and then sure enough, it all works out. And it was just cool to see that, and in the moment for Brundle to be like, here it comes, this is what's going to happen, and then he does it and executes it.
That is cool. I didn't get that commentary. I watched on the F1, whatever it's called.
F1 TV?
Yeah, I watched F1 TV, and I didn't get the
you can switch the
commentary.
commentary to the international one on there.
What?
Yeah.
I didn't know what that button meant.
Yeah. I went through this year at the beginning of the year, too.
Oh, man. Who was I listening to? Oh, I must have been listening to Australians. That was probably the local.
Either
I don't
that
know.
or F1 TV has their own commentary.
They sucked, too. God damn.
Yeah, it's no Crofty Croft and Brundley
Yeah.
Brundle.
Damn. Anyway, well, thank you.
Now you know for next time.
Yep.
Do you want to take the next moment?
Sebastian Vettel stops on the track, causing a safety car.
Yes, that we talked about, though. That was a while
Yeah.
ago.
Wait, did I not scroll down? I didn't scroll down.
Lap 36. We're on lap 36 now.
George Russell was told by his engineer to watch his tires.
Yes, but right before that, actually, yeah, no, you're right. So George Russell is defending from Checo,
Yeah.
and the engineer comes over the radio and it basically saying like, "Hey George, we need to make sure these tires last to the end of the race.
Yeah.
If this
He
isn't going to
says
happen, let
position
it by."
doesn't matter as much as maintenance, I think was the quote.
Yeah, it was something like that. It was something cooler than the way that I said it.
So basically, don't fight Checo, who's behind you, too hard, because that doesn't play into our strategy for the rest of the race.
Yeah, they'd rather have a solid fourth place than maybe third, but also maybe like something very bad or
Yeah.
something that forces him to take another pit stop.
Maybe 10th. Yeah.
Yeah, like Lewis last week. And so sure enough, Checo passes him like very shortly after we hear that commentary.
Yeah. And so then Lewis comes into play.
And then Lewis, so that, you're right, that puts George Russell in fourth place and Lewis in fifth place.
Yeah.
At this point, I noticed that the teams are very stratified. There's only one Ferrari in the race, but then it's Max and Checo in second and third, Lewis and George, except that George and Lewis in fourth and fifth, and then the McLarens, Lando Norris and Daniel Ricciardo in sixth and seventh.
We're
And-
very quietly sitting there in 6th and 7th.
True, which is a huge upgrade for them.
Huge.
Pretty awesome, pretty surprising, I think, for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, each of those teams are not quite close enough on pace to be racing each other. And so they're just at the top, they're just sort of clustered together. And that's basically how it stays for the rest of the race. We don't really get a great race
Yeah.
at the front of the pack.
At
the
this
end.
point, I'm pretty sure we're seeing quick laps by Charles. He's setting the
He's
fastest
just
lap.
gone.
And
He's
then
way out.
Max comes back, sets a hot lap, gets the fastest lap. Charles takes it right back, and then Max dies.
Yeah. And all that back and forth, too, like, Leclerc was, like, at
He was
least
still, like,
5
7
seconds
seconds
ahead.
ahead.
Yeah,
Yep.
usually 7 or 8. So even though it's like they were sort of trading the fastest lap a little bit, but Leclerc was just gone. Like, I don't
Yeah.
even know how much Max could see the back of its car. But, yeah. So Max dies on lap 39.
Putts to the corner.
Out of absolutely nowhere, he just pulls off.
Yeah.
And he said over the radio he smelled some weird fluid.
Yeah.
And the engineer says, you got to stop the car. And this causes a virtual safety car and Max to DNF.
His last lap was quite slow. He lost like 2 seconds on that last lap, and then obviously really gets the issue, and then has to pull over.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that. But as far as the broadcast was basically ignoring all the leaders at this point and continues to do so because there's just no racing going on up there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for us as fans on TV, It's just like all of a sudden Max is just out.
Mm-hmm.
And then not really much else happens for a while. I kind of, to be honest, the end of this race was kind of meh.
Oh, it was absolutely meh.
It's not. There's no racing at the front.
The most exciting part was Alex Albon.
Yeah, which wasn't even exciting as much like in the moment, just as much as it was like crazy.
Shocked. I was shocked. Every lap that went by, I was like, he's still on the same tires. He's still on the same tires.
Yeah. So Alex never pits for the entire race.
The only reason he pit on the last lap is because he had to.
So here's what I was thinking about. And I think that this actually wouldn't work because I think that they do the pit lanes in like the pit boxes in reverse order to your constructors' standings of the previous year. So the Williams would have been like way at the end of the garage.
Way at the front.
End, I think like right near the exit.
Yeah.
But what I was thinking when they were talking about this was, what if Albon comes into the pits and then crosses the start-finish line from pit lane, which would only work if his pit box was in front of the start-finish line. Mm-hmm. But if it was, he would save a bunch of time on the pit stop because he's only slow for the part going into the pit box and then just getting to the start-finish line. I was wondering if they were going to do that and it was going to be this crazy like race where he's going super slowly and then someone else is flying by on the track.
Yeah.
But I think, like I said, that wasn't actually possible. And so he does actually just pit the lap before.
Yeah.
Would have been cool, though.
Tragic. Yeah, the only thing happening at this point in the race really is that mid-pack fight for ninth.
Yeah, and I think my interpretation of this is that it's just this track isn't really great for overtaking, even with these changes. Mm-hmm. Pierre Gasly is just struggling to pass Lance Stroll lap after lap, so much so that Alonso is like on his radio asking his team, why can't Gasly pass Lance Stroll? Because they're holding, that whole train is being held up by Lance Stroll.
We got intel that it was intentional.
That Gasly was intentionally not passing Stroll?
Yeah, because when eventually he does pass him, he makes very easy work of him. He kind of goes right around him. And there may have been incentive for Pierre to A, not push his tires, and B, not try to go around crazy Lance Stroll, who seems very willing to cause an accident.
Huh. That's interesting. That's news to me.
Yeah. Eventually it happens. What is it, 5 laps later or something?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. There's not really... The first couple races, there was a lot of back and forth. You know, one car would pass another one, and then the other one would be right on the first one's tail, and they would pass back and forth, and it was this exciting battle. And I just didn't get that for this race.
Today we saw the intentions of the new regulations totally fail to work. We did not see a lot of passing. We did not see a lot of battles, even though someone like Alex Albon technically made up 13 places today. He did that mostly through not pitting.
And he ended up finishing in 10th, I think. So
he goes from 7th to 10th with his pit stop. But yeah, we see the front of the pack. It's 20 seconds from Charles to Checo. Checo's in second. It's 5 seconds from Checo to the Mercedes. It's 5 seconds between the Mercedes to another 20 to the McLarens, I think.
Yeah, it's like, 25.
The regulations were set up so we see competitive racing between teams at the end of a race, and we got none of that.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem like we would have, even if Carlos and Max were still in the race. We maybe would have seen Carlos going for Charles, but the other guys probably wouldn't have mattered.
Yeah, Leclerc was just so far ahead of everyone else, even of Max, who was a decent amount ahead of Checo.
There were 2 really good quotes from this race as well. There's when the race is basically ending, Charles has the hottest lap, or fastest lap, he's got that extra point for it, and he radios to the team, and he's like, should I go for the fastest lap? Even though I already have it, just to, solidify it at the end of the race so nobody can take the point away from him. And they say no, basically just don't take the risk. You've got enough time. And his response is, no. Or is it yes? I think it's yes. No. Okay, sorry. It's okay. He says, okay, but okay.
And he ended up grabbing the fastest lap on the very last lap of the race anyway.
Did he? Crazy.
Yeah.
But the other really good quote is when Max goes off. He parks his car on the side of the road because it's on fire. And I'm going to get vulgar for a second. Go earmuffs if you don't like curse words. But he goes, everything is fucking itself. I just think that's an incredible thing to say. Especially a frustrated Max Verstappen.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yep.
I'm super curious. Checo is, we'll get to the results and the standings in a second, but Checo is now leading Max in the championship by 5 points.
Yeah, because Max has 2 DNFs in, it's 3 races, right?
Yeah, he's 2
races.
DNFs and 1 win.
Yeah, jeez.
And I was talking about this a bit when Checo got pole in the last race. But Checo's been racing well, and if he's beating Max, I think traditionally the team would start to favor him over Max in a traditional team. But at Red Bull, Max is like so much the number one.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see if they run into any scenarios.
I think it would have to get to a point where they're mathematically only competing for a third. And Checo's a much better shot than Max. But I don't know. That thought probably doesn't matter very much. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, we'll see how things start to unfold. It does seem like the Ferraris right now are way better.
Yeah, for sure.
Let me run through the final results real quick. As we alluded to, Leclerc won by a lot. Checo gets the silver medal, comes in second, and George Russell gets a podium, like a real, true, serious podium. He was on the podium with Williams last year, but that was like that race at Spa that wasn't a real race.
Yeah.
So I think this is his second podium. Because I don't think he got podium when he raced in place of Lewis when Lewis had COVID in Bahrain, right? So that's pretty cool. I'm sure we all aren't surprised because he's a great driver and a great car, but cool for him.
Yeah.
Lewis comes in fourth. He probably has a better sense of whether or not fourth place carries points with it than 10th place. Then we have the 2 McLarens, Norris and Ricciardo in 5, 6. And then I'll just rip through the rest of these. Ocon, Bottas, Gasly, Albon round out the top 10. Joe, Stroll, Schumacher, K-Mag, and Tsunoda down to 15. And then Latifi and Alonso are the last 2 cars that actually finished the race. And Verstappen, Vettel, and Sainz all do not finish.
There's probably something wrong with Alonso's car after he pit. Because he was pretty racy until the last few laps, and then he had to come in for new tires, and then he really just got spat out the back.
Yeah, they've been having some reliability issues. I think that I read somewhere that this was actually Alonso's 3rd of 3 power units. They had to take a new power unit this race for the 3rd straight race.
Whoa. While we're on that topic, very quiet but kind of tidy race by Esteban. Where did he finish? 7th?
Yeah, that's true. I don't think they showed him on the broadcast a single time.
Yeah, I don't think I heard his name. I don't think I saw his car.
But yeah, you're right. That's pretty solid. Solid 7th. Right behind the McLarens. Sort of the best finisher outside of those top 4 teams. So that makes the Drivers' Championship look like this. Leclerc in first with 71 points. Then George Russell, in second place of the Drivers' Championship with 37 points. That's another very interesting one, is George Russell is significantly ahead of Lewis Hamilton right now in the Drivers' Championship. Yeah. Would Mercedes actually start putting their firepower behind him instead of Hamilton?
I don't know. Does Lewis know how? He doesn't even know how many points you get for 10th.
Yeah, I don't know if that would go over well. Which would be a little frustrating given how much Bottas helped him over those years of all those championships if Lewis kind of refuses to help George.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens, but that's a pretty interesting... I mean, I think George is ahead of Lewis by 9 points right now over 3 races. Pretty decent amount. Then we have Sainz in third with 33 points, which also means Charles Leclerc is way ahead of everyone else. He's got 71, and George has 37 in second.
Yeah, I mean, he is gapping the field.
I think this is as much of a lead. This is more of a lead than we had at any point last year.
Mm-hmm.
Then Checo's in fourth with 30 points. After that, Hamilton with 28 points, Verstappen with 25 points, Ocon with 20 points, Norris with 16 points, Magnussen with 12, tied with Bottas also with 12. And that's the top 10 of the Drivers' Championship. Then we get Ricciardo with 8, Gasly with 6, Tsunoda with 4, Alonso with only 2, Zhou with 1, Albon with 1, which is noteworthy. I don't think we mentioned this explicitly, even though we were talking about him. Maybe we did, but I'll just say it again. Albon got 10th, which is 1 point for Williams, and that leaves Aston Martin as the only team with 0 points so far this year.
God damn.
And the drivers with 0 points are Mick Schumacher, Lance Stroll, Nico Hulkenberg, and Nicholas Latifi.
Yeah.
And Vettel, actually.
Yeah, true. He gets a little bit of a, I don't know, handicap, but yeah, who knows? Maybe he'll retire next race.
I think he should give his seat to Oscar Piastri, even though those teams aren't affiliated with each other.
I can't believe you would wish that upon Oscar.
I mean, I think it's useful. Like, see what George did on a bad team for a while. It's still good. Yeah. I think you're always going to be pretty bad your first season. It's better to just get that out of the way than to just be, like, waiting around as a reserve driver.
Yeah, for sure.
So the Constructors' Championship now, Ferrari is in first with 104 points, and second is Mercedes with 65 points. Pretty interesting that Mercedes is in second in the Constructors.
Yeah, they're not going to stay there. Maybe they will. If they make valuable changes, I guess they'll stay there, but...
Yeah, they were pretty racy today, but I still also feel like they're not going to stay there.
Yeah, and the two cars that didn't finish were 2 cars on the 2 faster teams.
Yeah, I think Red Bull's had a lot of, Red Bull has had a lot of reliability issues. That's why they're so low.
Maybe that'll stick around. Maybe that'll keep being an issue. Who knows?
Yeah. You hate to see that. It's, it'd be nice if they would actually solve it on the track instead of the car just breaking down.
Absolutely.
Speaking of Red Bull, they are in third in the Constructors with 55 points, followed by McLaren with 24 points. All of a sudden, McLaren's like right in there.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Pretty wild. I'm wondering if their year, similar to last year, is going to be this story of, like, depending on the track, they're very good or very bad.
Yeah.
And maybe they get the 1-2 like they did in Monza, but then also, like, come in last in a few races.
Absolutely.
Alpine is in fifth. It's pretty surprising that McLaren is above Alpine right now. My impression is that the Alpine is a much better car right now.
Absolutely. And when you see Alonso saying he could get pole, it's wild.
Really unlucky. There's a few people that had a pretty unlucky race.
Yeah.
Alonso and Sainz.
Mm-hmm. The 2 Spaniards. Sorry.
Oh, yeah. No, yeah. For some reason, I don't think of them both as Spaniards, but they are. Alpha is in 6th with 13 points, then Haas with 12, Alpha Tower with 10, Williams with 1, and as I noted earlier, Aston Martin, Aramco, Mercedes with 0. The one other thing, I didn't mention this when we talked about Max going off, but it seems like Red Bull were saying that the problem was with Max's fuel system, but it was not the fuel tank. So it was a little different from the problem that they had in Bahrain. So a couple really quick things, and then I know you got to go because you're on vacation.
I gotta go vacate.
Why is that so funny?
I don't know.
You're on vacation. Let's see. We're in Imola next week. Not next week. The following week.
Next week's Easter. Get another week off. Imola the weekend after.
It's got a sprint race. That's all I'm prepared to say about it.
Do you know if there's any different for sprint races this year? Have any regulations changed for that?
I don't think so. Not as far as I know. And I think there's still going to be 3, just like last year.
Okay.
Wanted to call out an interesting thing about the Vegas race that was announced. So I'm sure everyone listening is aware of this, but they announced a race in Las Vegas that's going to be literally on the strip. And one thing I heard about it was F1 doesn't have an external promoter for this race. Instead, they're underwriting it themselves, and so they're going to take all the profits from it. And I think normally they do not do that. Normally there's like a promoter that pays F1 for the privilege, and then the promoter's job is to get everyone to come.
Yeah.
So I just thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, just very odd. I guess they really think there's something in Vegas for them.
Yeah. Or maybe it was hard to find a promoter and they really wanted to. Yeah. Either way, it's interesting. We'll see how it goes. I'm sure that they'll sell that one out.
Oh, yeah.
So that's it. Like I said, we got to end it quick. I got one final question for you. What'd you learn today?
Oh, man. Alex Albon's awesome. Williams is the coolest and best car on the grid. What about you?
I learned that Fernando Alonso is still the best driver on the grid.
Thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
See ya.